free on Roku, Zumo, YouTube, or your smart TV. Remember, Newsmax TV is real news for real people.
Chuck Sjursen, ABC News.
Who is your neighbor? Dave and Wally are team drivers for Oakley Transport. One day, they came across a very serious accident on the highway. Some might pass on by, but Dave and Wally saw there was no time to waste. They jumped into action and saved 2 people's lives with moments to spare. That's the kind of courageous love we need more of today. It reflects the respected culture Oakley Transport develops with their driving professionals. CDLA licensed drivers. Join Oakley Transport today for a rewarding career. Visit oakleytransport.com. That's oakleytransport.com. From the heart of Central Florida, you're listening to the most electrifying show in media, A Neighbor's Choice. I'm your host, your neighbor, David Gronowski. So glad to be with you again for our second hour of today's live broadcast. A Neighbor's Choice can be heard on FM and AM, on our YouTube and Facebook video stream each day, on our podcast partners, and on our website, oneighborschoice.com. That's oneighborschoice.com, where you can go and find all kinds of interesting articles and episodes. Online-only podcasts are found there. Look for our Things Hidden podcast, and you can see our series there. Also see our interview series with folks who are challenging the status quo about nutrition. Because if you don't have your health, how can you have any wealth? It's kind of a essential building block, isn't it? Foundation stone for our life. If we want to have an abundant life, we've got to have an abundant health. And so much of what's been told to us is government propped up ignorance, government propped up fake science, pseudoscience. I saw this tweet by Mike Cernovich, a blogger on Twitter. He says election hacking was being set up by media as their next Russiagate in the event of a Trump win. That's why you can find every media outlet seeding this story for months. Now Trump flips it on them, as with the term fake news, and they freak out. And that kind of illustrates my point that I've made, which is when it's on script to tell you to be concerned about the integrity of the election system, they'll tell you. Even Elizabeth Warren said so. Even Joe Biden's right-hand man, who's going to be chief of staff, said, yeah, they're rigged, in a Twitter comment just a couple years ago about how rigged elections are. But this comment, this exchange, I thought was interesting that illustrates the uniparty system, how it works. Politico was saying the chair of the House Republican Conference, referencing Liz Cheney, became the latest high-profile Republican to publicly urge Trump to accept the results of the presidential election. So they're a PR firm for the uniparty machine. And Donald Trump tweeted out a response saying, sorry, Liz, can't accept the results of an election with hundreds of thousands of fraudulent votes cast, enough to easily flip the election. You're just unhappy that I'm bringing the troops back home where they belong. And that's what the media is all about. They tell you they're about social justice, but they're not for it. I got to keep saying that over and over again. It's so important because Conservative Inc. wants to let you believe the left, their problem is they just care too much and they don't do good on the math. You know, they're just too loving and caring and they just throw the checkbook away and get you in debt a little too much. That's how Conservative Inc. makes you feel about the left. But the reality is that the corporate neoliberal left and the neoconservative Conservative Inc. are basically, they're on the same team. They've always been on the same team. They argue about things that, you know, once it's just them together, they'll fight like cats and dogs. But if you come around and mess up their game, they turn all their guns towards you. They turn all their gaslighting apparatuses, They turn their media outlets. They go they do not like their machine, their little game being disrupted. They like their little oligarchy. They like their little two-party machine. It's one party with two little wings, and they like it that way. They all want debt. They all want to spend your money for their friends. And they all do that. It's just to various degrees. And that's the thing that we have today. We have a situation where the two parties are saying, hey, we want business back as usual. We want business back as usual. And we don't want you to ever challenge the sacredness of our business. There's a story in truthout.org. Ever-growing millions of Americans face eviction and hunger. Will Congress act? You see how that works? Government creates a problem. Then they create the solution. Why are millions of Americans facing eviction and hunger? Because of bad, pseudoscientific, heavy-handed lockdowns that have no scientific basis for working. What's their solution? Congress must act. They must flood the market. Let's see what their solution these guys say. Back in May, this is in truthout.org. Back in May, the Democratic-controlled House of Representatives passed the HEROES Act. It was aimed at delivering trillions of dollars of additional federal funds to support healthcare systems, unemployment benefits, housing assistance, nutritional programs, which is no nutrition in there, as well as money to keep cities and states, public transit systems, schools, and other vital infrastructure functioning. Since then, the House has passed several updated versions of the act, and yet, with Trump and the Senate GOP hostile to federal programs that they misleadingly claim will benefit only blue states and cities, the HEROES Act has languished. Through the late spring and summer, the GOP apparently hoped the pandemic would simply vanish and tens of millions of unemployed people would all be able to return to work. Opposing expanded unemployment systems, senators such as Lindsey Graham urged that support-oriented measures would sabotage the labor market by providing people with disincentives to re-enter the workforce. Once it became clear that the pandemic wouldn't simply vanish of its own accord, the GOP pivoted in embracing much smaller financial stimulus packages, reframed its opposition to the HEROES Act as fiscal responsibility in the face of a Democratic legislative effort to use the pandemic as an excuse to fund all of the party's favorite programs. Thus, legislative stalemate. As a result, in the last weeks of 2020, absent quick congressional action and with the pandemic raging worse than ever, millions of Americans are staring into an economic abyss, somewhere in the region of 12 million people, millions of them gig workers who don't qualify in normal times for unemployment, and millions more who are now considered to be long-term unemployed and who, again, in normal times would have maxed out their unemployment benefits, will lose their financial lifelines next month. Unpack the economic morass, however, and the predicament of low-income Americans is far worse than just a congressional inability to extend COVID-era unemployment benefits. The last 9 months have peeled back the veneer on a society so vastly unequal, both as compared to earlier moments in U.S. history and as compared to every other advanced industrial democracy on earth today. Man, that it no longer has either the ability or the will to do right by those at the bottom of the economic pyramid. 3 billionaires now possess the same amount of wealth as the bottom half of the U.S. population. And why do those billionaires vote for your same candidates, author? My goodness, isn't that neat? Meanwhile, somewhere in the region of 13 million households that rent their homes are at risk of eviction. Once eviction moratoriums end over the coming months, if this tsunami of evictions does occur, it will be on an even larger scale than the housing displacement that followed 2008's financial collapse, and will add to homelessness crisis in America on a magnitude no other developed country comes close to experiencing. So this person is just making the case for why government has to solve what government broke, because this is the mindset of the average corporate media person. Government is God. Government violence is beauty. Government creates wealth by printing money. that you don't have to work. They don't understand arithmetic. They don't understand science. They don't understand how electricity works. They don't understand how to create pollution-free energy for their climate change. And they don't understand how to create jobs with wealth. All they know is government equals my God. My God provides what I want. If I sacrifice to them, what do you have to sacrifice? You obey. You surrender your mind to groupthink, stupid narratives. And then you go along with allowing the government to control every aspect of your life, tell you how you're allowed to get on an airplane. And here's the thing, government doesn't have to do a lot of it directly. As you see, so many corporations can do it. They can enforce the control themselves because they're propped up and they have monopolies like airlines do because of government regulation. Therefore, they can also extend all kinds of onerous, terrible services and requirements because they know there's no competition coming in because government eliminated them. So that's a way of privatizing your tyranny. It's not a market. It's not free. Nothing to do with that. It's privatized tyranny. It's still government controlled, managed, and dependent, but it's privatized. But that's what these folks do in the media. They don't understand. This person, this author, doesn't even imagine that the lockdown wasn't necessary. She can't imagine that. She can't imagine that government wealth is not going, like government creating money out of thin air is not wealth. She can't imagine that. Because in the world of being a writer or an opinion or a journalist in the media today, it's all about being a very safe and predictable priest for the establishment, for the status quo. It's all about telling that good old story that government is our God, that government is our savior, and that if we allow the right people who are politically correct to run that government, they will bring us into salvation. They will save us from our decadent freedom, and that they will manage our health for us. They will manage what we're allowed to eat. They don't want us to eat meat. Kamala Harris said, I love cheeseburgers, but we're going to have to look at meat for climate change. She said that when she was running for president earlier. They don't want you to eat meat. They want to control every aspect of your life. That's why we have to be engaged in politics to some degree, right? It's not how we're going to create solutions, but it's how we protect what we have today, or else you're going to have people buying into low information narratives like this person's writing, where they're saying government has to save us by printing money. Look, you might get a paycheck from the government for once or twice, but after a while, if they keep printing money to give people housing and food and income and basic income, eventually no one's going to work, and the real reality of wealth creation will kick in really bad. It's going to be ugly. Many other countries have traded in relatively private free market economies for the false lie of democratic socialism, which is just corporate fascism. And they never recover. They're still far back, held back, because of their experience with unleashing envy and violence that comes with so-called corporate fascism. Democratic socialism, same thing. Back in just a moment with more. You're listening to A Neighbor's Choice. David Gronowski here. Let me tell you about a man named Gabriel. Every day, Gabriel puts on his boots and drives across America to make sure our store shelves stay stocked with the food people count on. See, Gabriel served our country overseas. He knows that America stands for freedom, quality, and caring for others the way we would like to be treated. That's why when Gabriel saw food shelves getting low during the pandemic, he hit the road as a driver with Oakley Transport. In the land of the free, where no one should go hungry, we need heroes like Gabriel to help keep America fed. CDLA driving professionals, join Oakley Transport today. Keep America fed. Visit oakleytransport.com or call them today at 1-877-8-TANKER. That's 1-877-8-TANKER.
A lawsuit is not something that anyone looks forward to. It's a stressful process. There are attorneys in Tampa Bay that keep clients well informed, creating less stress. That law firm is Catania. Personal injury law is defended with full disclosure. There is no guessing game. If it's an auto accident, medical malpractice, nursing home negligence, unsafe working conditions, or motorcycle accidents, the law firm of Catania will handle the process worry-free from start to finish. Many victims don't realize they have a claim for the loss until they talk to Catania. They only represent private individuals and treat every case as if it's going to trial. Putting families first is more than just a slogan. It's their way of practicing law. It's a commitment to you. Remember, they don't get paid if you don't get paid. So go to Catania.com. Over 28 years in practice. Catania, personal injury, auto, and motorcycle accident attorneys. Catania, putting families first.
Office Tampa.
Not attorney, spokeswoman.
Hello, this is David Gronowski with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a sixth-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pasture's beef at your local grocery here in Florida, or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR.
Not ready to go to your favorite seafood restaurant? Get the highest quality fish for less, delivered straight to your door by Fast Fresh Seafood. Order our fresh hot snapper, grouper, mahi, and more. They're boneless, skinless, flash frozen the same day, and individually vacuum wrapped. Pick the size filet you want, the amount you want, and checkout's easy at fastfreshseafood.com. The best thing, every fish is on sale. Fastfreshseafood.com. Caught fresh for you, delivered straight to you. Stay home and stay safe.
There is all kinds of lunacy going.
Welcome back to A Neighbor's Choice. I'm David Gronowski, your host. We're live. So we're dealing with a news media that's losing its power, but it's desperate and it's coming out with sharp things as it sees that people don't buy its narrative anymore. They don't buy that if you put identity politics first, justice will happen. At the end of the day, people want real justice, not fake justice. They want real news, not fake news. They want real prosperity, not fake prosperity printed out of a printing press or a computer. They want real food, not fake plant industrial goop that makes them more money. They want real fats, like saturated fats, not fake polyunsaturated fatty acids that are found in vegetable oils, industrial garbage. They want real nutrition, not fake nutrition. They want real clean energy, not fake energy like John Kerry with his 70,000 Botox shots a day can provide. They just can't provide the real thing. They provide fake alternatives to the real thing. On this program, we have people call in live from prison, first-time nonviolent offenders with 4 back-to-back life sentences, asking for clemency. We get the word out. We get their message out. We get them getting noise for them. And we, not just us, but there's, of course, many people, and things happen. They get clemency. They're home now with their family. Meanwhile, we got the fake purveyors of fake justice in the media who use, and that thing irritates me very much, when I see that they use names like Eric Garner, using Eric Garner, who died unjustly, selling unlicensed cigarettes, saying, "I can't breathe" in New York. They raised probably billions of dollars in T-shirts and things off of that man's name and likeness. They didn't even bother to get rid of the law that got him killed. No, it's too much for these scoundrels. They want to use people's suffering, real world tragedies of people losing their dad, losing their son, their daughter, what have you. And they use that emotional pain, that emotional solidarity that we naturally feel with other human beings, especially when they're doing nothing wrong and they're hurt in such horrible ways and killed. And they use that natural human emotional solidarity to exploit us, to divide us, to get us hating each other based on external identity stuff that we can't change. Can't help it, who we're born as. You know, we can't help that. And we shouldn't have to be treated like we have to be tribal war enemies just because the corporate press is desperate to keep us in their little groupthink paradigm. It's not working. Their system of keeping us all in the same framework, it's not working. And they're trying ever so harder to push it and push it and push it. I heard a news person say that they're wanting to make it so that you have to have vaccines to get on an airfare, to get on an airline. Since when? But see, the only reason they're able to have that kind of conversation is because government has cartelized the airline industry for the most part. And so in a market, you wouldn't impose something like that because you would allow for your, diversity of customers. I got the story here. This is in Financial Times, an establishment PR company. Vaccination will be a necessity for international flights, says Qantas chief. Airline plans to insist that passengers have had a jab against COVID-19. Qantas plans to insist that passengers on international flights have been vaccinated against COVID-19 before boarding its planes once any jab is rolled out, according to Philip Gerardius in the Financial Times. Alan Joyce, the Australian Airlines chief executive, said he thought a vaccine would become a necessity for international travel. We are looking at changing our terms and conditions to say for international travelers, we will ask people to have a vaccination before they can get on the aircraft, Mr. Joyce told Channel 9 in Australia. I think that's going to be a common thing talking to my colleagues and other airlines around the globe, he added. Qantas is the first big airline to publicly raise the possibility of refusing travel to passengers who have not been vaccinated. The pandemic prompted Australia to close its borders to non-residents, and Qantas has suspended all international flights except for a skeleton schedule to New Zealand. The company does not expect to reopen most of them until the middle of next year. Vaccine breakthroughs in the past 2 weeks have raised hopes that international travel could start to recover in 2021, but they have also provoked questions about the health status of would-be passengers would be verified. See, this stuff is just so just a little too convenient to anybody with the discernment to think that these cartels that they have their power because of government propping them up. There's this virus. It's the best way to take care of it is to protect the elderly, not shield young people so that you create herd immunity. But no, they want to play God because they believe that they can use the state and corporations to be God. And they can play God and in turn create a situation where they can, tell us when we're allowed to fly and we had to be forced to use their medicine against our will in order to fly and see the earth because they think they own the earth. This is not a free society. They're trying to create a globalized, tracked and monitored and traced and surveilled hellscape where you have to use medicine that you don't even know They were just telling us that the vaccines were unsafe because Donald Trump rushed them. And now their narrative is so stupid. Oh, the vaccine's perfectly dangerous. It's totally dangerous because Trump rushed them out the door. But those are the same vaccines that you got to have to be able to fly to go to another country because they own the earth. This is preposterous. It's disgusting. It's anti-scientific. It's anti-freedom. It's anti-family. It's pathetic. Back in just a moment.
Ronald Reagan would turn over in his grave if he saw what's going on today.
Crazy things are happening.
You cannot be afraid. You've got to stand up for what you believe is right.
But one thing is for sure.
You can't trust anybody.
For talk, news, and information, you can count on us.
Enough is enough. I mean, I almost blew a gasket.
Good for the country.
I know what I'm talking about. A lot of wackos out there.
Your connection to talk about it. The all-new News Talk 1040, WHPO.
More setbacks for President Trump's effort to overturn the outcome of the 2020 election. Michigan today certifying the results of its vote.
Vice Chair Van Langveld.
The Board of State Canvassers voting 3 in favor with 1 abstention. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court rejecting 5 lawsuits filed by the Trump campaign to invalidate more than 8,300 ballots. Among the cabinet nominees, President-elect Biden is expected to introduce tomorrow his former Fed Chair Janet Yellen. She would be the first female Treasury Secretary if she's confirmed. Pennsylvania Governor Tom Wolf urging residents to do all they can over the Thanksgiving holiday.
Right now, all of us need to be vigilant about taking safety precautions and following COVID mitigation measures. And that includes following CDC guidance to stay home and not travel for the holidays.
North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper says residents must wear masks anytime they're around someone who isn't from their household. Daria Albinger, ABC News.
Welcome back to A Neighbor's Choice. I'm David Gronowski, and we're doing our Veterans Radio segment. Here to do that is the founder of BringOurTroopsHome.us. He joins me every time on Mondays, Sergeant Dan McKnight. How you doing, Dan?
Good, David. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's great to have you on again. We're going to have our friend Danny Sjursen join us soon, but I wanted to let you start off. I know you've always got interesting thoughts to start us off with.
Oh, boy, there's always so much to discuss, and today, David, is like any other day. It seems like every time during this uncertainty and potential leadership transition that there's an information mega bomb that's dropped every single day that we could discuss for hours. And after spending the last 8 weeks of our Veterans Radio segment discussing our efforts to end the endless wars and all of the progress towards that goal that we've made with the Trump administration, I'm losing a lot of sleep right now over the names that the Biden-Harris camp are announcing for key cabinet positions. I'm watching all of our progress beginning to circle the drain in a slow and steady march towards more and more war, forever war. And I say this kind of tongue-in-cheek, but the office of the president-elect, and I know we've all seen his signs that he's made, has announced names like Anthony Blinken, who Biden will tap as his Secretary of State. Blinken. The same Blinken who was the architect for our Syrian war strategy. And Blinken has vowed to revitalize American global involvement, especially in Syria. And he's overtly hinted that American troops would remain deployed indefinitely and forever. But he's a bit of a wordsmith, and he's a bit of a used car salesman, a bit of a con man, because on one hand, He's telling us that endless wars are unsustainable, but on the other hand, he says that we need to distinguish between endless wars and open-ended deployments of U.S. troops. Next, the source of most of my sleeplessness is Michelle Flournoy, who is to be Biden's would-be Secretary of Defense. Imagine that. The first female SecDef. How woke of us. Maybe an unprecedented period of peace is about to be ushered in. But wait, David. My Michelle is no dove. Dating back to the Clinton administration, she has never seen a war that she didn't love, and there were many wars that never happened that she really wanted to happen. In the Clinton administration, she wrote the Quadrennial Defense Review, the QDR, and we'll talk about this in the future, I'm sure, which laid the ideological foundation for all of the endless wars that have followed. In the QDR, she announced the United States would no longer be bound by the UN Charter's prohibition against the threat or use of military force, and that when in the interests at stake are vital, we should do whatever it takes to defend them, including, when necessary, the unilateral use of military force. I think we can all get behind that concept, right? If America is threatened, we should be able to defend ourselves from hostile aggressors. But again, it's a little bit of word jujitsu. She argues that defending America and her interests include, and I quote, ensuring uninhibited access to key markets, energy supplies, and strategic resources. So by framing the unilateral and illegal use of military force all over the world as defending American interests, her QDR presented what international law defines as aggression, which is the supreme international crime, according to the judges at Nuremberg, and she calls it defense. Flournoy has been on a perpetual revolving door in and out of government service. She's poisoned the Clinton and Obama administrations with her warmongering drumbeat, and then leaving government service to form the Center for New American Security. That sounds nice, CNAS, and to work for other D.C. think tanks that spend time and capital pushing for endless and forever wars. David, we're in what General John Glubb described in his book, Fate of Empires. We're in the era of decadence and decline. And the characteristics that Glubb describes in that final state of empire include a systematic and normalized corruption, internal political hatred, fascination with celebrity money and fame, an influx of foreigners, and a perpetual state of militarism. And it's this, that perpetual state of militarism, that is the greatest threat to our nation. We mentioned that today we have our good friend Danny Sjursen on the radio with us, and he wrote a fantastic article last week, and it's titled, Where Are They Now? Leaders from my Afghan tour are on to bigger and bankable things, where he describes the path from military general to defense contractor to think tank consultant to high-ranking government official, wash, rinse, and repeat. And his article details several of the high-ranking military officers from his own deployment tree and where they are now. And I don't want to spoil the plot for you, but David, none of those war generals are advocating for peace or an end to the empire building we are engaged in around the world. Danny, are you on the line with us now?
Oh, I am. Yeah, I've been here listening to the interesting scenario where I agree with every single thing you're saying and think that this should be, talking about this Biden team coming in should be the most nonpartisan, transpartisan thing available. It's absolutely vital what you're bringing up. And as we talk about this piece that I wrote, we're really going to be discussing how these things connect. The generals connect to the civilian national security types.
Right. The article is great. And David, I don't know if you had a chance to read it. I'm sure you have. You're so well versed on this. But Danny, we talk about Bill Belichick in the NFL and his coaching tree, right? That's his legacy. I feel like the generals in the military have their own general tree, talking about the people that they've been able to bring up through their ranks and put them into these 3-4-star general ranks and then pull them out into the civilian service. You want to dive into that a little bit?
Well, absolutely. So here's the key factor that I found. I literally thought of this piece in the middle of the night, as I often do. It's something jumped out about one of the old division commanders of mine. I believe it was James Terry, because I had to, and he had commanded the 10th Mountain Division down in Kandahar, which I had fallen under for a while during the height of the surge. We're talking 2011. And so I was like, I wonder where he is now. I remember not liking the guy particularly. I remember thinking he was kind of an empty camouflage suit. Well, I just dug into this one individual, and next thing you know, I figured out that all of these guys, all of the generals, from that tour, and I went through the order of battle. I found the order of battle of every battalion and above commander on that 2011 and 2012 tour, and I just went searching. I didn't get any leaks from Edward Snowden. Chelsea Manning didn't have to get involved. Google provided the whole thing. Because what I found out is that all of these individuals have either gone directly to the defense contractors, the war profiteers, the arms industry, or they've gone to the strategic security consulting wing of that, which really connects that, right? It's kind of this bridge between that and, Silicon Valley and Congress and all these things, right? And then the third place they've gone is the think tanks. And you say, oh, isn't that nice? They've gone to think tanks. Who doesn't like thinking? I love thinking. Problem is, when that thinking is financed by the very same war industry, by the very same defense contractors. Now, wouldn't you know that many of the guys who worked together, who commanded one another, who were sister units, who spent their careers going to the same holidays, probably hanging out, off duty together like we all did, a lot of them ended up in the same place after the military, working for the same companies, consulting for the same people, or in sort of a vertical or horizontal kind of silo where they're able to help one another in this business. And what you mentioned about kind of the way that they create the same military structure on the outside, I dug down to the colonels for my sins and because I'm an insomniac. And I looked at all the colonels, and what I found out is they have done one of two things. They've either retired as colonels because they didn't make general and then followed the generals into very same spots where they kind of still are their errand boys, always a bridesmaid colonels, right? Or they are still in, and now they're in the positions that get to make choices on acquisitions, that get consulted, that get pitched these projects. And the thing that was most staggering about it was the scope and the depth, and it surprised even me. And some people say that I'm a cynic.
Yeah, it's fascinating to me. I didn't realize that, they all seem to go in that same direction, huh? It's pretty uniform, right?
There are exceptions that prove the rule, but for the most part, every general but one in that tour, Dan Bolger, who just happened to write a book called, Why We Lost or whatever, wouldn't you know that was the one general who didn't go into the military-industrial complex. He just teaches history at NC State because he has some principles. Pretty much all the other generals are in some wing of this. The vast majority of the colonels, I'm going to give it a conservative estimate, a very conservative estimate, and say that 8 out of 10 of the colonels, the battalion commanders and above from the 2011 and 12 tour are in a significant connection. They are deep in to some wing of the broader military-industrial complex. And I'll tell you, that's a very low number. It's higher than that, but I'm going to be cautious.
What do they do for those
during
contractors?
my deployment, Danny, we talked. I've talked about this for years. For almost 15 years, I've talked about it. Our NSA, when I deployed in 2005, was Stephen Hadley, and I'm sure you know the name. He led the media campaign for the Iraq surge, right? So even when they're done serving, even when he's done being the NSA, they still come back and they get recycled back into the system, and they keep pushing for forever and more war. And Stephen Hadley joins a couple people, and I'm going to read a list to you. Douglas Lute, H.R. McMasters, David Petraeus, Michael Stone, Robert Gates, James Mattis, Leon Panetta, Colin Powell, and William Howard Taft IV, and we'll talk about him in a second. Those men sit on the executive board for the Atlantic Council, which is probably the biggest pro-war think tank there is. Those are the biggest warmongers in America.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought up the Atlantic Council, because the Atlantic Council has, like you said, we have Petraeus on there. I did a little bit of a look at the old Atlantic Council in terms of how many generals and such they have. My count is that on the board of directors, what you've got is the following, and this is I just take the high points here. You have not only generals sitting on it, you have the Raytheon CEO, 2 Airbus CEOs, former or current, senior Raytheon lobbyist, Lockheed Martin CEO, as well as, of course, General Scaparrotti from my tour. Joining them are 11 3- and 4-star generals, 3 CIA directors or deputy directors, and 2 secretaries of Homeland Security. That's just the Atlantic Council. Oh, and by the way, they receive the 3rd most money of any think tank in America, from the U.S. government itself or defense contractors, to the tune of $8.7 million. And that's actually a lot of money for a think tank. And who gave them the top donations? Airbus, Raytheon, and Lockheed Martin. Oh, isn't that nice? Wait, did I just say that the CEOs or former CEOs of those same organizations sit on the Atlantic Council board? Hey, remind me not to pay attention next time the Atlantic Council puts out a report on war.
I do pay attention to one thing they said just last week. They put out a quote in a story. They said, rushing for the exits in Afghanistan would leave a lasting stain on America. That's from the Atlantic Council.
I mean, what do they mean by that? I mean, do you think that these people actually think, didn't they mean any of this? I mean, I wonder sometimes. In other words, that's a bold statement. Stain on America. Like, when I think stain on America, I think slavery or, some sort of like horrifying thing that we've either done or some massive civil liberties violation. But leaving a country literally across the globe, that we've already lost the war, we already pivoted to nation building, it's hopeless, it's a zombie war, it's the Walking Dead of wars, and we've got 4,000 or 5,000 soldiers there right now. We're failing by every metric, and when we started failing by every metric, the Pentagon went ahead and just classified all of it, so we can't even know, right? They classify defeat, and then we're supposed to believe that somehow this is going to be a stain on America? And that's such a bold statement. It actually makes you wonder if they believe any of what they're saying. You want to look them in the eyes and say, do you actually believe the things you're saying? There's a quote in the movie Paths of Glory with Kirk Douglas. It's like old Stanley Kubrick movie, anti-war. And this general is explaining to the colonel whose soldiers about to be executed for cowardice, even though they weren't cowards, just to set an example. And the general says to him in this like beautiful tea room, he says, every once in a while to maintain morale, you have to shoot a soldier or two. And Kirk Douglas looks at him and says, General, do you actually believe the things you're saying? And that's how I feel when I hear about that.
Yeah, I want to ask you, what do they actually do in a lot of these defense contractor jobs? The folks that you were mentioning that you were serving under.
This is an interesting question because one might think, working for these technological industries in particular, these generals must have a whole lot of expertise, right? They must have all kinds of engineering degrees, right? Tech savvy stuff, computer science. No, that's not the case at all. But in case you're wondering, these defense contractors and these consulting agencies, they do actually brag about what they're going to do for them. They brag about it open source when they announce their appointments, because what they're trying to do is they want to increase their stock, right? They want to get confidence that they're going to get more share of the market. And one of the ways that they kind of brag about that is they say, look at our press release of the new people we hired. They're going to be able to help us get more contracts. So that helps our bottom line. So, for example, when you look at what these guys are supposedly bringing to the table, take General John Campbell, who commanded RC East, the 101st Airborne Division when I was there. So, he joins BAE, right? BAE is Europe's largest defense contractor, but he joins the American wing of that, right? What does BAE produce? BAE produces almost all of the ground combat vehicles in U.S. Army Armored Brigade combat teams, right? So what does the company's chairman say Campbell's going to bring to the table? Now, Campbell's not an expert on, the technology side. He doesn't have a degree in business necessarily, right? He doesn't have experience in business, certainly. He says, this is the company's chairman, Campbell's knowledge and perspective on the U.S. military's needs around the world will be highly valuable. Or, same guy joins Systematic Incorporated, right? This is just another, global provider of logistics, management, and technical services. This is another wing, right? And this time, their chairman, because he serves on both, he brags, General Campbell will deliver strategic guidance to help make Systematic the leading provider of command and control and intelligence and surveillance solutions in the defense industry. And continue, his ability to predict and address the needs of our warfighter makes him the ideal person to take on this pivotal role. Now, I could read you that quote for all these generals because they brag about it. What they're saying is his insider trading knowledge and his existing connections to his former colonels who still call him sir, because that's how the military culture works after retirement, that he still has influence over, that still respect him, that he probably still grabs a beer with. He's going to be able to predict, because he's going to get insider knowledge. He's going to leverage those connections in order to make sure that BAE or Systematic gets the contract. If it happened in another country, if you took away the name United States and you put one of those fake names the U.S. Army comes up with for Iran or wherever and say, Ahurastan did this, and you read the quotes I read, American people would be like, wow, that's a banana republic. What a Tin Pot dictatorship. But that's how America's military-industrial complex works.
You're listening to Veterans Radio, brought to you by BringOurTroopsHome.us, led by our guest, Sergeant Dan McKnight and Danny Sjursen. We'll continue in just a moment. BringOurTroopsHome.us is the website. We'll continue with Veterans Radio to see how Danny's article ties in with the recent announcements from Joe Biden about who he wants to run the Pentagon and every other aspect of our foreign policy. Back in just a second. Hello, this is David Gronowski with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a sixth-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pasture's beef at your local grocery here in Florida, or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR.
A lawsuit is not something that anyone looks forward to. It's a stressful process. There are attorneys in Tampa Bay that keep clients well informed, creating less stress. That law firm is Catania. Personal injury law is defended with full disclosure. There is no guessing game. If it's an auto accident, medical malpractice, nursing home negligence, unsafe working conditions, or motorcycle accidents, the law firm of Catania will handle the process worry-free from start to finish. Many victims don't realize they have a claim for the loss until they talk to Catania. They only represent private individuals and treat every case as if it's going to trial. Putting families first is more than just a slogan. It's their way of practicing law. It's a commitment to you. Remember, they don't get paid if you don't get paid. So go to Catania.com. Over 28 years in practice. Catania, personal injury, auto, and motorcycle accident attorneys. Catania, putting families first.
Office Tampa. Not attorney spokeswoman.
Not ready to go to your favorite seafood restaurant? Get the highest quality fish for less, delivered straight to your door by Fast Fresh Seafood. Order our fresh hot snapper, grouper, mahi, and more. They're boneless, skinless, flash frozen the same day, and individually vacuum wrapped. Pick the size filet you want, the amount you want, and checkout's easy at fastfreshseafood.com. The best thing, every fish is on sale. Fastfreshseafood.com. Caught fresh for you, delivered straight to you. Stay home and stay safe.
Are you ready to transform your career? Jess Smith was too. She was stuck in a job that was controlling her life, consuming her free time, and offering little opportunity for growing her pay. Then she found FinTech Mortgage Association, and she never looked back. FinTech Mortgage Association makes home lending simple, and they take care of home buyers like family. Using technology to make everyone's life easier, FinTech Mortgage Association equips each of their loan solutions architects with the tools they need to build a career with a schedule they control, a product they can take pride in, and an earning potential that is life-changing. Unleash your true potential. Join FinTech Mortgage Association. Visit finmay.com. That's FINMAE.com. You're in charge now. NMLS ID 1492187. Equal housing lender.
Welcome back to A Neighbor's Choice. We're doing our Veterans Radio series we do on Mondays here with BringOurTroopsHome.us. Their founder, Dan McKnight, joins me now, and Danny Sjursen, both of them veterans. And I want to just let you guys kind of bring it home here in this last short segment about where this look that you did, Danny, with your article about the revolving door relationship with defense companies making money off of endless engagements, and how that might tie into what we're seeing proposed by Joe Biden.
Well, the thing to keep in mind is that the archetypal Biden pick, right, a Biden bro or a Biden sis, so to speak, would go something like this. He or she went to an Ivy League school, then was a congressional staffer, was appointed to a mid-tier role in Obama's National Security Council, consulted for West Exec Advisors, that kind of, subgenre of the military-industrial complex, and then also at the same time was a fellow in the off years, right, in the Trump years, at the Center for the New American Security, or CSIS, Center for Strategic International Studies. So how does this connect? Well, many of these think tanks, for example, have some of the same generals that I described in Where Are They Now, that article on the board, and they are CNAS and CSIS are the second and sixth highest, respectively, recipients of defense contractor money in the think tank world. CNAS, of course, is co-founded by who? Michelle Flournoy. And where are their top donors? Northrop Grumman, Boeing, and the DoD. Now, the thing about how this works is you take Flournoy, and I don't want to turn it over to Dan to kind of like bring it home, but you take Flournoy. So she co-founds CNAS, and she also co-founds West Exec Advisors, which is kind of describes itself as sort of the bridge between the hipsters of Silicon Valley and the, suit and tie folks of Raytheon, right? And that's what they do. They kind of serve as that bridge. She's also for like a Boston consulting firm of some sort, which I believe increases its defense contracts by about 20 or 30 times in the period that she's on the board there. Nevertheless, how does this work in practice? Well, oh, by the way, her co-founder of West Exec Advisors is new Secretary of State incoming Tony Blinken. Just, side note, it's a little incestuous. It's no problem. These folks are like the Habsburgs at the end. They're that incestuous where it becomes like they can't even see. They're like born blind, But if you'll let me put the flipping aside, how does the corruption work in practice? In 2016, Michelle Flournoy, the CNAS co-founder, she emails back and forth with the United Arab Emirates ambassador in Washington. In those exchanged emails, she pitches a project to him saying, hey, maybe CNAS's analysts can write a report, on whether Washington should maintain, this non-binding multilateral, like missile control and drone technology agreement. It's meant to be sort of a non-proliferation thing. Maybe we can do that for you. And the UAE's like, awesome. We would love you to write a report on whether the U.S. should follow that. And she's like, great, we will. So they send a check for $250,000 for the drafting of the report. I wish someone paid me that for the reports I write, because my reports are better, I'll tell you. And what does the report argue? You guessed it, amending the agreement to allow the UAE to purchase those American-manufactured drones. Now, what might they do with those? They probably just fly them around at air shows. No, unfortunately, they're used for surveilling their own people with an abhorrent human rights record that's been, just over and over again talked about, and bombing Yemeni civilians. Now, whatever your position on all of that is, leaving it aside, that level of insider corruption is unbelievable. And Flournoy is a favorite of the generals. She's a favorite of the retired generals. She's a favorite of the active generals because she is what? Qualified. A cult of qualification. In fact, you can't question if she's qualified or not, right? Because she's woke, right? She's a woman. So if you question that, there's people on Twitter right now in the establishment left who are saying, don't question Flournoy. Otherwise, as a white male-dominated national security establishment, you're going to make me uncomfortable. And I don't think you're an ally. And all the other buzzwords that they use. But really, it's a stifling of dissent. So that's how it works in practice. And, so we might get the first female Secretary of Defense who's complicit in corruption and all these things. And what else are we going to get? Why are we surprised about it? The first female Secretary of State, the first mother to be Secretary of State, right? Madeleine Albright, she said that it was worth the cost to, kill 500,000 Iraqi children with sanctions. So why should we be surprised? Why should we just accept anyone because they're a woman or because they're a person of color? I look at their record.
What a concept.
Correct. And just one last thing that we're going to bring in as far as the Biden administration, another member of that same West Exec Advisors is the new the Director of National Intelligence, Avril Haines. And I know we're running out of time, David, but if anybody wants to know a little bit more about just the corruption and the incestuous nature of the Biden administration on foreign policy, look into Avril Haines, look into Michelle Flournoy, and look into Anthony Blinken.
Well, very good, guys. Always a pleasure. Always jam-packed with information. I love having these segments because they're extremely informative for everyone. So thanks again. That's it for Veterans Radio, and that's a wrap for A Neighbor's Choice. I'm David Gronowski. Email me, hello@aneighborschoice.com. Godspeed.